recording. All right. Too many concurrent sessions. Try closing other recording software. What?
Oh boy. Good night, everybody.
Oh, no. Actually, you know what? That was just the local recording. Oh, but actually, you know what's not going on? We're actually what is it? Bill O'Reilly would say, we're live, pal. Sorry about that. Ladies and gentlemen, hi. I'm Doug. I'm typically associated with word games, but also retro games, and I'm here alongside legendary local comic, man of the town, socialite, and esteemed Atari collector Jim Sharkey. Jim,
I feel like legendary and social comics should be mutually exclusive, but thank you. Very kind.
And I is Cassandra Hammerstone, is the audio a little hot? Can we turn it down? All right, it's Jim's probably, right? We're turning, okay. Jim, let's just quickly say hi once again, please.
Take it down just a skosh, for all of the ageism that we may endure tonight, let's just say, remember, gang, we're the guys that were there playing this shit, like, when it was,
And the good news is now I'm told we're all dialed in on audio tonight, so we sound squeaky clean. We look squeaky clean. I am showered, well, not shaved. I haven't shaved in years, but showered, fed, and ready to go. Tonight is the Heritage Auction, a signature auction. So, Jim, they always do these on Tuesday nights, but from time to time, they do sort of off-schedule specialty auctions. And tonight is near and dear to both of our hearts. And, as you know, I don't typically stream the Heritage Auctions because there's obviously a gentleman, Greg from Get the Greg Games, and he kind of owns 99% of the Heritage Auction scene. However, as much as we love and respect Greg, he wasn't even born yet when we were playing Atari, so doesn't have quite the connection that you and I do to this genre. So I figured we'd offer an alternative tonight.
He can never know the disappointment when you unboxed that Atari 2600 Pac-Man and played it for the first time. The amount of crestfallen that you felt as an individual when you realized they so botched the port that it was such a disappointment. Doug, bond with me, please.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so much about that scene. A few memories just off the top of my head, because we still have another about 8 or 9 minutes before the thing gets underway, and we'll talk about the highlights of what's coming up. But memories from Atari would be, for me, yes, the unboxing of stuff. For me, it was the matriculation from having a Pong setup. In black and white, and then realizing, I believe it was Christmas 1978, yours truly was 4 or 5 years old, and imagine seeing that under the tree, and at that point, Combat might as well have been, Doom Eternal, right? Or a PlayStation 5 game.
Call of Duty.
Yeah, Call of Duty. It might as well have been. For the following couple of years, the games that we would play, we would have a paper route. Yeah, people today don't even know what a paper route is, but we sold newspapers. We got on a bike and we flung newspapers at people's porches to get maybe, I don't know, $3 or $4 a week. And once a month, we could go down to the Caldors or the Bradleys and buy a cartridge, like an Activision game or an Atari game. Sure. And that was like the biggest freaking deal for us.
Dude, I remember my Uncle Steve came home one day with Pong, and it's like, what? I can control this dot on my TV? It's
right. Right, exactly. And, and then we had that for a couple years. And then, of course, the infamous video game crash of 1982, 1983. And this is relevant for the folks that are looking at this in terms of not necessarily appreciation of gaming, but as an investment vehicle. Boy, all the young ones that are one generation earlier than us that love to buy and sell video games, let me tell you, these games that we're going to be seeing tonight for hundreds, in some cases thousands of dollars, you had things called dollar stores and odd jobs, and they were closing out these games sealed for $1 a piece. I mean, you could go through and buy a sealed adventure or a Superman or all these other games that we're going to see for literally $1. And they had piles and piles of them. And, of course, as they went unsold, they ended up being destroyed. And, of course, in some cases, actually demolished and buried in the middle of the New Mexico desert. Which brings us to the next thing. We're actually going to have some examples tonight of the infamous Alamogordo, New Mexico dump, where Atari dumped unsold inventory. And strangely enough, everything comes full circle. Now it's a freaking collectible item. People not only bought them when they originally sold them from the documentary, and they did the dig, but now people are sending them out to be graded. So we're going to find out tonight what a graded, destroyed New Mexico ET goes for, and that should be quite interesting.
Yeah, and you have to draw the distinction between ETs that were buried and everything else, because the folklore is that ET was such a disaster they had to bury their stock. I don't think that's the reality. I think that for whatever reason it was the end of video games, and this particular Atari warehouse just buried their shit, because I own like an Air Sea Battle and a couple others from the dig, and I'll be obviously interested to see what these go for. But yeah, the ET is kind of the holy grail. Available on eBay right now for about $1,200 last I checked earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's a footnote from that a lot of people don't realize, is that it wasn't just the fact that Atari in its management failure presumed that for every installed 2600 console in the field that every single owner would buy a copy of ET, and they literally manufactured close to a 1-to-1 ratio. And so obviously that means that once the game came out and the next month's video game magazines, revealed that it was a disaster in terms of playability, if you hadn't already found out from your neighbor, or you were the victim of finding it under the tree, there were just a ton of unsold copies. And you're right, to your point, Jim, there were also a lot of unsold copies of other titles as well, and they all just literally went in the dump. And so now there you go, rags to riches, I guess. But that's not the only story tonight in the auction. There's a lot of really interesting titles up. There's a lot of the third-party Atari releases, the adult games, and I think a lot of that is also due to the fact that you couldn't sell those in retail stores.
Dude, chase the Chuck Wagon, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like holy shit.
Yeah, some of these were very low print because you either had to, you're right, in Chase the Chuck Wagon, you had to send in the, what do you call it, the UPC code from the dog food box. You had to go mail order for like a Kool-Aid Man. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was mail order from the video game magazines. So they didn't make too many of these, period. So when you think about it, I think if they made, 10,000 copies of Chainsaw Massacre, and that's, let's see, 1981, 1982. So we're talking 40 years ago. How many of those exist today, period, much less in the box, much less never open. So that's truly an example of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Halloween ones, those horror things. People love to collect the genre. So you have horror movie aficionados, you have the video game aficionados. I could see that going for, an exorbitant amount of money. And of course, there's also the classics too. There's lots of first-party Atari games like Adventure and some of the other games. There's even Magnavox Odyssey stuff in here. So it's not entirely Atari. It's 90% Atari. But we're going to see some crazy stuff tonight, that a lot of which has not really made an appearance in the graded auction scene. So a lot of new information coming out. So even if you're here not necessarily for the love of the game, but for the love of the money, we're all going to learn together what the market value on some of this stuff is. And while Jim and I are going to focus a lot more on the nostalgia, come one, come all on this one tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So whether you're watching it live, and if you do feel free to come in and jump in the chat, say hello. Heckle, we don't care. We can take it. We're big boys. Or if you're watching it later on video on demand, like I imagine most people will, have a cup of coffee. Hope you enjoy it. We expect with this auction about 90 items. I'm expecting it to go about 70, 80 minutes. So get yourself ready for about an hour, 20 minutes of fun. It starts in 2 minutes. Jim, your thoughts? Anything? I know you have your bidding window window open. What do you have your eye on potentially throwing a few simoleons at?
I've been issued a strict edict from my fiance who said you need to dial back on the bidding and the buying. So I do, however, have a lot of skin in the game, and I'll pull out examples. I have a lot of titles that are up for auction tonight that I actually own. So obviously I have a vested interest, so I'm going to be watching that. There's a lot that I like, dude. I'm sure I will make my my desire for some of these known, and I do have my finger on the trigger, but I'm going to try really hard to abide by Angie's wishes and keep it in check tonight. So,
totally understood. And while I'm not particularly looking to be buying stuff tonight, I too, Jim, have a number of these items in my collection, and I'm going to be looking at it from the perspective of, do I need to go and send this off and get graded? I have some sealed copies of Joust. I have a few other really minty games that may also be worth looking at. Jim, you have so many graded games, and I'm sure you'll be happy to show us a few examples.
Real quick, this is the one I'm really keeping my eye on tonight, the Activision Hero. I've got a 9.2 A+, and I think there's a 9.6 right now that's sitting at about 1,600, and I probably have maybe 400 or 500 into this, so I'm going to turn a profit, but I want to turn more.
Now,
so I'm hoping it goes north of $3,000.
And not to get too inside baseball, but I will say that, now, Jim, I turned you on to the particular auction that was in, and it turned out...
I did. I sniped it from you.
We were both the last two bidders, and I gave up at a certain point. Had I known you were the opponent, it might have been a little bit of a different outcome, but suffice it to say, I know what you paid. I know what the likely market value is, and let's just say you probably owe me dinner a little higher than Arby's, a little lower than Michael Jordan Steakhouse, somewhere in the middle, maybe Golden Corral.
I would have stood down on that if you had mentioned it, but I feel distinctly like when we were chatting, there was a point where you said, I'm bailing at a certain point. So I'm like, I'm in.
Well, Jim, the time for the pregame and talk is done. It is time to get it on. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start the Heritage Atari auction. I guess I'll call it that. I know they have a different name for it. What is it? The
signature auction?
Signature auction. All right, so here we go. We're starting off with the 1972 Magnavox Odyssey cartridge. So this was an accessory for the original Magnavox Odyssey, and it was kind of a card with a overlay for the TV set.
Can you distinguish what exactly uncirculated means? Is this the same as an unopened copy, or what's the difference?
I think the implication is they have reasonably concluded that no one used it. Okay. It may not have had shrink wrap on it, but it gives all the appearances of not having been used. And again, I believe this is the first time we've seen these at auction. And just so here we go. We're already well over, including buyer's premium, over the $500 mark on this. I got to tell you, I'm actually kind of stunned. I really didn't think that the Magnavox Odyssey accessories would have this kind of interest. While admittedly this was one of the very first, I'll call it non-strictly Pong things you could do with your TV, very interesting to see the demand here on that.
Hey, while there's a couple of these Magnavox titles, which I guess are, slightly less of interest, I mean, if we get age shame for the Atari 2600 stuff, imagine what they're going to say when we gawk over Odyssey games.
Well, here's the other point, Jim, and this one closed for, let's see, close to $600 with buyer's premium. On to the second one. Wow. Here's the thing. It proves a point. Some people will say, well, Atari can't really be that valuable because the Atari aficionados are dying off. Well, guess what? Magnavox was a good 5-6 years before that. And as you can see here, there's clearly enough people to pump up this stuff. So I think it to some degree puts the lie to the lack of interest in Atari because of the age of the console. If Odyssey is getting this kind of action, I suspect there's a very healthy Atari market. And, liken it akin to like classic cars, things of that. You and I, Jim, we're at the age where we're, admittedly, I don't think there's anything shameful about saying middle-aged, but also, we've had careers, we have disposable income, so I suspect that there's definitely a very strong market for at least another 5-10 years in the Atari world.
Yeah, and I may be stating the obvious to the collectors market, but there seems to be a certain amount of negativity for people who even want to collect the sealed games. Like, they feel like games are meant to be played, and that's fine. You can buy your $5 copy of Kaboom on eBay, but to have a sealed copy slabbed in plastic, for me, that's some nostalgia right there for me.
I think the nostalgia is more poignant the older you get, not less so. Again, I think that's another, to your point, that's an excellent point. That's an indicator. The demand is there, and looks like these three will consistently, after the buyer's premium, end in the $600 range. So very interesting, and I wonder, it may be a small number of people competing for these three, but nonetheless, the interest is there. Now, after this one, Jim,
PC.
Very interesting to see. We have Spider-Man, and that is actually, I believe, an IBM PC floppy disk.
5 1/4 or 3 1/2?
It looks like it's a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk copy.
Oh, all right.
So that's actually interesting to see. Now, Load and Go software. Let's see, what was Atari 400, 800, 8-bit computers. It's a 5 1/4 inch floppy. Load and Go, for those youngsters out there, was basically a company that made budget software titles for Commodore, Apple, Atari 8-bit. They would sell them at the electronics boutiques. They also sold them in like grocery stores and in drugstores and like the end caps at the register. So very cool. And that one went for, let's see, $170, so not bad. And speaking of floppies, Jim, here's Double Dragon for the IBM PC compatible. I believe this is also on floppy. So again, really cool. I don't remember ever seeing a graded IBM PC Double Dragon, and as you can see, obviously, again, there is interest here. It's up over $500 so far with the premium.
Who's the other dude that does the auction? Greg?
Yes.
Okay, what's Greg's thing? Is he a very popular retro gamer
he
guy?
pretty much
I'm out of the
the
loop.
Heritage Auction streaming scene. But again, no disrespect to Greg, he's just considerably younger than us, and maybe doesn't necessarily have the same attachment to anything.
Doesn't have the reverence. Doesn't have the same reverence.
Yeah. Now, Jim, now we're getting into your wheelhouse. Atari Decathlon, that one actually went quick, $52. Adventure up next. Jim has a 9.0, is that?
No. Slow your roll there. It's only a 7.
Oh, it's a 7. Okay.
Okay, all right. Maybe it's complete in box.
Yeah. Now this is a glue seal, so it's unopened, and it looks like it's at the $1,050, $1,100 mark now.
I'm sure the guy who's got one of these on eBay right now for like $70,000 is going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. There's one interesting fella that's been trying to shoot for the moon on adventure, but this is clearly the correct barometer for determining the true market value of something like this. Nonetheless, personally, I'm biased here. I think Adventure was one of the most iconic video games of all time. Sure. I would suggest that most of the modern adventure gaming genre is a descendant of Adventure. I think that if you never had Adventure, you may never have Legend of Zelda, for example. Many of the tropes in the gameplay mechanics again, were descended and inspired by Adventure. So I think it's super, super, super important in the history. Clearly, I'm not the only one with that opinion, considering that we're now at $1,700 before premium for the 7.5 sealed first-party Atari Adventure.
By the way, can we take a minute to talk about what a deep cut that buyer's premium? Like, ouch.
Yeah, no, what is it, 15 or 20? It's 20%. I'm sorry, it's 20%.
Yeah, so an extra $400 right now if you buy it at $2,000.
No one ever accused Heritage Auctions of being a non-profit organization, Jim.
Dennis Kahn. You go. Oh, wait, is he? Oh, he's Watt, isn't he?
Over $2,000 after the premium. Now, up next, Jim, we have 4 copies of asteroids in various conditions, and also, I believe, various print runs. So this is something you'll see here. These aren't exactly going to set the world on fire. And a lot of that is because there were so many copies of asteroids out there and so many different print runs. So it kind of dilutes the market a little bit. But again, another iconic game. Most people, if you talk to 100 people that had Atari, I'd say at least 2/3 of them probably had asteroids, right?
Loved it. Played the shit out of asteroids, and the sound was kind of groundbreaking, as I recall, for asteroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one, by the way. Mine's only an 8.0, no seal, so...
The original arcade version, if you recall, the fact that they ported it, the obstacles they overcame was the original arcade game had like 6 different buttons. And they managed to somehow translate the functions of all those to a joystick and one button. So the button obviously fired, but I believe it was like up to hyperspace and back.
No, pullback was hyperspace.
Pullback was hyperspace. Forward was thrust, and so. But they did an amazing job of somehow making it. What's the word I'm looking for? It playable. Fun to do. So very good job for them. Mm-hmm. So this one is...
I have so many upcoming tonight, by the way, including one of the Blue Box Space Invaders, which was actually a later production run, so I'm hoping that does well.
Yep, indeed. So it looks like this one's going to run about the $100 mark. There we go, about 114 after. And so here's our final asteroids of the auction. So again, they're pretty consistent, and again, no one was expecting them to go too crazy because it's very easy to find. You can even find people that have stashes of unopened asteroids today. Not too difficult to get. So, but nonetheless, if you're just starting out in sealed collecting and graded collecting, this is a great title to go for. It's inexpensive, and obviously, it's going to be sentimental to most.
I hate to go full boomer, but I'm still struggling a little understanding the difference between unopened and sealed.
Unopened would imply that there's a glue seal, and sealed would be cellophane or some sort of wrap.
Fair enough.
So up next we have the Fox. Fox Entertainment made some games for the Atari 2600, and they weren't printed in as much as the original Atari games. This one is Bank Heist. I love the artwork. I don't believe it's a intellectual property. I think it's an original title. Fun theme. It's actually a pretty cool game. And this is the kind of thing that's for the completionist, for the kind of person that wants to collect the subset, like all the Fox games. So it's performing as you'd expect, probably worth a couple $100.
I just cheated and peeked ahead. That Alamogordo Centipede that's coming up is pushing $1,000, which makes me feel good.
It's actually currently sitting at $1,100 with the buyer's premium. So one can only imagine where that's going to go. And also coming up in a little bit, so we'll have a Battle Zone next, and after that, our first adult game. And I don't think YouTube will have a problem because I'm just saying the name of the game, Beat 'em and Eat 'em. I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer what the implication is on that. Let's just say it plays like Kaboom.
You talked about Greg, who's I'm sure a fine fella doing his thing and not being necessarily old enough to play these games. I remember, since we're talking about Mystique titles and the adult titles, I literally remember walking into like a seedy Times Square electronics store, buying a copy of Custer's Revenge, which is a terrible game, by the way.
Yep. Yeah, that one wasn't big on the gameplay, and once you got, it only had one level. So I mean, once you fulfilled the objective, there was nowhere else to go.
Just watch out for the arrows coming down like rain in Ohio, acid rain in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean it was a very simple mechanic, and once you did, 69 points gets you an extra life, by the way, in that game. I'm not even making that up. So Battle Zone here, 9.0 sealed game. Again, pretty common. So it's going to probably hover around the $100 mark.
Yeah, the gray red banner Atari 2600 later titles, very uninspired. Not interesting to me as a collector at all.
And again, a lot later in the Atari life, 1987, they were just trying to wring a few more dollars out of it.
All right, here we go.
So here we go. Again, like I said, so this the gameplay mechanic here is similar to Kaboom. Instead of the Activision Mad Bomber, what happened there? That one
was clicking out.
Boy, I guess they didn't want to make a big scene there. $1,500 on the game. Burger Time here. M Networks for Mattel Networks. They did a bunch of games. The art style is pretty cool. I think of all the M Network games, Burger Time is my favorite in terms of the art aesthetic. It's very colorful. It's very faithful to the arcade Burger Time property.
Yeah, I have, I think, a PAL version in here somewhere I'm trying to produce, but it's, I don't know.
And I will say, for the limitations of the 2600, it wasn't a bad port. A very difficult game to port because there's a lot going on, but it was actually pretty playable.
Yeah.
And it is performing as you'd expect. There's interest here. There's a lot of Burger Time fans. I don't believe this was printed in pretty big numbers, and I have most of the M Network subset. I actually don't have Burger Time. Wouldn't necessarily throw down $500 for it, but there is definitely some demand for it.
Again, I'm looking ahead at the Alamogordo Centipede, and
Sure.
don't people know, like, don't serious collectors know you can get some of these Alamogordo titles on eBay for like $100 and then maybe pay an extra 60 or 80 to get rated? And I don't get it.
I think that there's a lot of hype factor on this, and I think that I to your point, I suspect that the first wave of these in the auctions will be pretty high, and then there'll probably be a market correction on that.
By the way, I feel like I have to bid on a few items tonight, just in the spirit of the auction.
Carnival
I haven't decided what yet, but it's going to happen.
Carnival, another good arcade port, sentimental to me, the arcade game Carnival. There was a steakhouse that my family would take me to on the Connecticut shoreline, and they had a Carnival machine, and instead of eating dinner, I would play Carnival. Yeah.
What was it? Listen, I'm a Connecticut guy. Indulge me. What was the steakhouse?
It was in Branford. I don't remember the name of it. It was like a weird kind of
took a shot.
Yeah. I wish I remember the name. It escapes me. Oh, by the way,
wow, if you blinked, you missed it. That Centipede sold for $925.
Some of these went pretty quickly. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it went for about $525. That Centipede. Here's I think this is a Canadian third-party 2600 game, I guess called 2600 Compatible. Very exciting. How compatible are you with the 2600?
Apparently from a place called Zellers, which I'm guessing was the Canadian version of Bradley's.
Perhaps. It's even acknowledges in the description. It is an oddball title. So there you go. It looks like it's going to go at about $100 or so. But coming up after this, hang on to your hats. We mentioned it in the pre-show, Chase the Chuck Wagon. This is a very desirable game. It's, let's see, it's complete in box, 8.5, currently sitting at $1,500.
What do you think's rarer, the Chase the Chuck Wagon or the promotional Pepsi Invaders?
Oh, the Pepsi Invaders is way, 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 way more rare. I believe that was only distributed at a trade show, correct?
Oh, no, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I believe there's only a handful of those at best, where they might have had maybe a couple thousand copies of Chase the Chuck Wagon, but still, you couldn't buy Chase the Chuck Wagon in a store. $2,000 with $2,000 after the premium. So yeah, that's definitely a high dollar item. Now here's the antithesis of rare, a Combat. Literally everyone that bought an Atari got a pack-in copy of Combat in this box. This is not a first print because it's not the quote-unquote gatefold. So it's about as common as it gets, but it is in very, very good condition. And even if it's Combat, when you're talking 9.0, that actually does infer some sort of rarity there. So, and of course, some people will probably want that as a shelf piece because it's the thing most people remember first. So despite despite there it being so many of them printed, it has that sentimental value. 500 on that, and I guess there's a second copy. This one is 6.0 but sealed. So this one may be struggling a bit, but might get maybe 60, 70 bucks, I reckon. Or maybe not, maybe 14.
Would you
might want to
18?
jump on that. You could pick that up for 53 bucks. Now a few people are waking up.
Yeah, I very rarely buy anything lower than a 7. I do have a couple. I have a casino, which is I think a 6.5, a human cannonball, but it's just for the nostalgia. It's not an investment vehicle.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned that, and it's a sign of the times, right? I don't think that even if you wanted to as a game developer, you could get away with remaking Human Cannonball. Could you imagine the outrage on the internet, regardless of whether you're on Team Red or Team Blue? The idea of shooting people out of a cannon into the side of what do you call it, a bucket, wouldn't fly today. But in 1979, that was fun for everyone, children and adults alike. Yeah, I guess I'm not surprised that they never remade Human Cannonball. Here's Cosmic Commuter, a very late Activision title, perhaps one of the last ones, right, that ever came down the line.
Yeah, Pressure Cooker was another late one, right?
But boy, look at the price it's commanding here. 9.48 plus sealed. It's at $1,300. So clearly, then that's going to be for the Activision enthusiasts. Yes, someone paid $1,500 plus. Now, here's a really obscure third-party company, Froggo, and they only made 2 or 3 titles, one of which was called Cruise Missile.
With possibly some of the lousiest box art.
Right. If you want to get someone into buying a game called Cruise Missile, you don't just put Times New Roman font on the box saying Cruise Missile. But I guess the Froggo marketing department was probably like, old stuffy guys in suits that never played a video game in their life saying, well, that'll certainly get little Billy to want to buy in, huh?
These titles are kind of the equivalent when you're at a concert and you want to know what's the right song that I should, go relieve myself. And these are like pee breaks.
Yeah, this is the bathroom break game. So the first one went for $300 after premium. Yeah. This one is currently sitting at $6. Jim, you could jump in here, get yourself a Cruise Missile.
Hey, let me throw a bid in. I just got outbid at $20.
It's already up to $40.
Yeah, I bailed at 38.
There you go. So the second of our 2 Cruise Missiles. And then, of course, after Cruise Missile, another one of the Fox Entertainment games, Crypts of Chaos. That one is, that again, was one of the lower print titles in that subset. Again, I don't believe it's an intellectual property. I believe it's an original title. I don't remember how the game plays, but I know that it is somewhat desirable in the collector community. Looks like it's going to be in the mid-hundreds.
I'm not going to lie. I'm totally looking ahead to the Activision Hero, which is currently sitting at $2,500, which makes me very excited since I'm holding one here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know how it is, like, when you're watching these and you have an example and you're trying to, it's a chance to kind of gauge your net worth to some extent. So it looks like about 500 on that. Now, this is an interesting one. This is not actually a legit game, so this is a reproduction of a prototype EEPROM. So Atari never actually conceptualized this.
I was the high bidder at $12 for a few minutes there. Now I'm the high bidder at 16. All right, I'm out.
To each their own. I don't begrudge anyone what they like to collect. This isn't really for me because it's not real. It's just someone's imagination of what it might have looked like. Maybe they had some concept art they found, but I suspect the market probably agrees because this is struggling to cross the $50 mark here. But again, yeah, to each their own, I suppose. Now coming up after this, Donkey Kong, again, another one of those titles that a lot of people had. Not really a great port of Donkey Kong, if we're being honest with ourselves, Jim.
Hot garbage, I think, would be a better, more apt description.
I'm sure you've played Atari 26 Donkey Kong. In this port, the Donkey Kong is more like a gingerbread man, right? It's like a 2D gingerbread man, and Mario is sort of like, I don't know, just sort of like a very, like a cherubic dot that moves around, and yeah, they tried. They gave it an effort, but I don't think they probably shouldn't have ported Donkey Kong in the first place. Some games just won't work, but they did their best to try all of them.
But you know what's interesting, though, and it's reflected in the prices on these Donkey Kongs. I mean, this one's going to go for probably less than $100, but you look at the Pac-Man, which was another full port, and it still commands big bucks, as you'll see later tonight.
History has taught us, though, with the Pac-Man specifically, you could sit there and scoff at Howard Scott Warshaw, the programmer who drew what really ultimately proved to be the very unlucky assignment of having to port the most iconic game at that moment, but only being given 6 weeks to do it, to hit a deadline. And I honestly think the poor guy on his own with no, and again, you and I think software development, you have a team of 100 people, and this guy had just him. There was no one else, and he got sat in a room and said, port Pac-Man into like 2 kilobytes or 4 kilobytes of code in 6 weeks. And you know what? The fact that he did what he did, I give him credit. And now, obviously, you talk about now there's been 4 decades of homebrew programmers and people studying and learning every little trick and tip you can do. And obviously there are amazing ports of Pac-Man at 2600 now. But again, yeah, that's great. If you have 30 years to study a processor, great. But the guy had 6 weeks and, whatever recreational substances he could jam down his gullet, I give him credit for doing what he did.
By the way, I stand corrected as a 6.0 Donkey Kong crosses the $600 mark.
And I think again, this is a case of sentimental value, great shelf. It shows well on the shelf. Everyone knows Donkey Kong. Everyone that Atari played it, and there you go. Here's another 2600 compatible game. Our friends from the north, they didn't just give us Nickelback; they gave us Zellers.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna bid on these Enduros coming up. I like a good Activision.
2 copies of Enduro, and I gotta be honest with you, Jim. I feel like they're a little undervalued here. There could potentially be a bargain to be had.
Yeah, they're gonna jump.
They're
gonna
jump.
Be out of my range.
But we'll see on that one. Of course, the mintier of the 2 going first, and then the lesser going second. But meanwhile, the Canadian off-label game going to probably hit about $100. Again, I don't know who's collecting this. Surely someone is, and there's plenty of folks that like obscure stuff. So this is probably right up their alley. But I just don't know there's going to be a lot of interest in a game like this.
True.
But yeah, 2 Enduros coming up, and Enduro was one of the really well designed, very playable Activision games. A lot of fun, stands the test of time. So good stuff indeed. By the way, a few people in chat saying hi to Ascension, saying hi to Ashley. Welcome, thanks for coming by. Hope you enjoying the Atari nostalgia tonight for the next probably hour or so.
By the way, aren't there also a couple of actual full consoles up for auction?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So there's a few different places that grade. It's not just Wada Games. There's VGA, and now there's CGC. But the folks at the VGA, Video Gaming Authority, I believe, is the correct expansion on that. They will actually grade boxed consoles, and there are 2 boxed Atari consoles later down the road tonight. That's going to be really interesting to see. Now, that's, if you have a tremendous amount of shelf space, that's one hell of a collectible.
By the way, I just bid that Enduro up to 160 and then tapped out.
There you go. Yeah,
I dropped that like Dave Hester.
I was just about to say, you dropped it on someone. So there you go. That's the first one. Second one hasn't broken 50 yet.
Oh, it will in a minute. Give me a second.
I see Jim tapping, so he is in the mix on this one.
I'm a high bidder at 55. Uh-oh. I really don't want this.
Fair warning. 3, 2. Oh, and you're out?
Missed it by this much.
Yeah. There you go. Now, coming up next might be the main event of tonight's auction. I mean, obviously, stick around for the rest of it, but this is probably going to be the big one. The Alamogordo Dig ET, folks, at $2,200. I mean, look at that beauty. It shines. It's got some patina, as they say on American Pickers, Jim.
Comes with certificate of authenticity from the city of Alamogordo. $2,200.
$2,200 plus the premium, so about $2,600 on that one.
I'll tell you what, I'm definitely going to get mine graded this year for sure.
Apollo Games, another third-party manufacturer, they have an interesting story. The final game that they made was called Guardian, and Apollo was in the process of going out of business, and Apollo's creditors literally foreclosed on them the day after the developer finished the final code for Guardian. They only printed a couple hundred copies of that game, and I will tell you, I am very proud to say I have a complete in-box copy of that.
Really? Wow, what's that? That's probably worth a few beans.
Oh, yeah. Now, going back into the adult world, the Gigolo / Bachelor Party game for the 2600 again, in the $1,500 range. Boy, I will tell you, maybe it's with these adult games. You got to like blink and you'll miss it. If you don't, they're not going to hold the porno games out for a long time. I noticed that.
Kudos to Mystique because they doubled down. Like, we're not going to give you one adult theme game. We're going to give you 2.
Well, we also blink and miss golf at $52. Grand Prix, another really strong, fun, enjoyable Activision title. And that one is about 200 and change. Pretty good, actually. Now, Jim, this is the one you have the big interest in. Sit back, my friend, and watch as you find out.
I don't think there's much going on here. I think
there
just
may
hit a wall
not be a
right
lot
of
of competition. It may be a $2,500 game.
Oh boy!
But you know what? Look, can you really complain on that? It's still a good price.
Yeah, I'm still up, but it's a little disappointing. Not gonna lie.
Not sure why they seem to be really moving with lightning speed here tonight on this one. I guess maybe the auctioneer has to go to bed early or something. It is what it is, I suppose. Ice hockey, another Activision sports classic.
Yeah, I've got a 9.6 ice hockey here.
And after that, we're going to look at Indy 500. Now, Indy 500, folks, interesting because Atari actually made a special variant of the paddle controller called the racing controller. And Jim, of course, as you know, the difference between the two, the racing controller has no restrictor on it. You can spin it 360 degrees, whereas the paddle, you can only go 180 degrees of motion. And so it's like an Indy-style racing game. It's actually a really fun game. The controls take time to get used to. It can be frustrating, but once you figure it out, it's a lot of fun. It was the only game that used the racing controller, if I recall correctly. So kind of an interesting little side note in the Atari history. That went for about 200 around that after premium.
Yeah, I own one of those also complete in box. Certainly not enough to prompt me to send it off for grading.
And here's the Parker Brothers 007 that just finished it. My goodness, $2,700. Wow, that's quite a big score for that one. Here's the sealed joust. Looks like it ended about $100. Junior Pac-Man. Looks like it's going to be. Again, I mean, we're struggling to keep up with this. It's going very fast tonight.
I keep looking over to my left where I have most of my games here to see. I feel like I own one of these.
Does Heritage rent its internet bandwidth by the hour? Like, wondering. But nonetheless, Junior Pac-Man actually does look like it's doing pretty well here. Kind of surprising because this isn't a difficult game to find. Although now I look at it twice. This is a 9.8 A++.
Sure.
So it's top of the pops, as they call it. You won't find a better example. So that certainly would explain why this one is kind of exploding in value. Looks like it's going to be, let's see, $720 after the premium. Here we go. Kung Fu Super Kicks. Telegames, a relatively obscure third-party publisher. Obscure title. Let's see. So this is a version of Chuck Norris Super Kicks. Okay. Don't know a heck of a lot about this one. Definitely in the super obscure category, to be sure. But it looks like it's going to land somewhere in the $100 mark. There are a couple.
Coming up are some at least one Magic title. I don't own any of those, but I do like the silver box.
Oh yeah, the silver art motif is pretty cool. I have about 75% of that subset. There's like 2 really tough ones that I don't have that I'm still on the hunt for, but I do enjoy looking at those. They're really nice.
Oh yeah, you have a Towering Inferno, do you?
As a matter of fact, I think I do have a Towering Inferno on the shelf. Yes. Laser Gates here. Again, all the Magic games are pretty fun to play. They're pretty well regarded across the board.
With the Sphinx, I remember playing Dragonfire, which in its game design was very simple. It was just run across the bridge.
Now, here's an interesting one, Jim. Atari Mario Brothers, not to be confused with Super Mario Brothers, the original Mario Brothers.
Yeah, sure.
This one, you know, decent enough port, but anything with that all-important Mario property on it is going to draw money. So, as you can see here, it's an 8.0, but we're already at the $2,400 mark on this one. So, suffice it to say, you find a Mario Brothers at the yard sale, kids, for the Atari. Don't hesitate. Don't talk the old lady down to $2 from $5. Don't be a schmuck. Fork over the $5. It's worth it. I always hate that when people brag about how they got like a $2,000 game at a yard sale and they're like, she wanted $5, but I talked her down to $3. And I'm like, you know what? You are the person who's not going to die from old age. You're going to die from getting hit by a bus. It's called karma.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So anyhow, Mario Brothers. Now there were, as you can see here, there was a later. This is the later late 80s.
This is the good one. This is the better one.
I believe it is less prevalent, but here's the thing, Jim. It's actually not doing as well because people want that iconic Mario logo and artwork. This one is from an aesthetic standpoint. While you are correct that it's a lower print title, I think in terms of the desirability on this for the artwork, the first one probably wins the day. Although, well, now I might be proven wrong. They're looking to be within a couple $100 of each other here, so maybe I'm wrong. They'll be worth about the same. And here's another huge game, He-Man Masters of the Universe. Everything He-Man is super collectible. Like in the I know in the toy world, people go crazy for the He-Man stuff, right?
Yeah. Hey, what do I know? Look at it. It's already up higher than my hero. For God's sake, people, what are you doing?
He-Man Masters of the Universe. So it is, let's see, a 9.0 sealed. And look, let's be fair, though. This was also a really hard-to-find title even back in the day. They didn't make a lot of these, so I totally get it. Wow, it's still going. $4,000 after the premium.
Yeah, I can't help but be
Nutty.
A little bitter. You people, you're spending time on Castle Numbskull.
and now, in fairness, not to feed your anger, but it wasn't exactly the best playing game either. I wouldn't say it's E.T., but it wasn't Hero.
But here's, speaking of a great playable game, I
Mega
love
Mania,
Mega
one of the
Mania.
best Activision shooters, one of the best Atari shooters, and that's an esteemed company. Your Space Invaders, your Asteroids. Mega Mania is right there with them.
Yeah, I bid at $260 and then I tapped out.
Yeah, and still a solid, worthy bid. You're only a few bids off on that one.
$280 is not a bad price for that.
So here is the Canadian, North American multilingual version of Missile Command. As you can see, this one looks a little different stylistically. So it has the English and French language on them, if I recall correctly.
I've got a 9.6 A+.
Okay.
But they ain't exactly hard to come by either.
There are a number of them out there. Yeah, there's in some of these there's been a lot of discoveries over the years, especially in South America, of unsold inventory. So I think this was one of those titles that there's a lot of them out there, and this one underperformed about $50 with the premium. Here's the first print of Ms. Pac-Man for the Atari. Now, you know what I was telling you, Jim? Remember I said the poor guy had 6 weeks to do Pac-Man. When you compare Pac-Man to Ms. Pac-Man, which came out just 2 years later, the difference night and day in terms of playability, quality of the port, and Ms. Pac-Man was more complicated than Pac-Man. 3 different mazes, and that one was night and day better. So again, to my point, they just needed more time. This one they had a couple years to do, and it's Ms. Pac-Man Atari was just solid, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, the box art's not the greatest, but
not the greatest, but plays really, really well. It looks like about 100 and change on that one. Now here it is in Alamogordo, Ms. Pac-Man, and holy Toledo, Jim, over $1,000 on that one, $1,200 for the Dig Atari. Now we go back
by the way, I bought a couple of those Alamogordo Dig titles, and they do a really nice package because they come from the city. They give you a certificate of authenticity, a metal tag.
Yep.
There's a document. You get a city brochure. It's very well put together.
Yeah, huge respect to the city of Alamogordo for being pragmatic and smart about this. They could have just been like, hey, we don't want people causing a mess and doing this. They saw opportunity. They realized that this could be a win for everyone. Great public relations, good exposure, raise money for your city. My hat's off to those guys. It was a really well done effort, and you're right, they did a really good job with it. And
boy,
yet
people
another
just go
mishap.
cuckoo for the 9.8 A++, and here we see another.
Yep, and this will be our final Ms. Pac-Man of the night. This was
Actually,
the
$4. That's not so bad.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. We're going to have, 5 different Pac-Men. And as you can see, lots of little subtle differences. There's a lot of different print runs they did on Pac-Man here. You'll notice the very little, the subtle differences in the box art. To my point, they printed so many millions of copies between Pac-Man and E.T., that is what downed the Atari mothership. But it is what it is. And there's some people I know that are trying to collect all the different variants of the Pac-Man box. So you'll see, even though there's a gazillion of them out there, that they probably consistently hold a few $100s for each of these. Well, this one, look at this. 9.4 glue seal. Look at this, Jim. Holy crap. Did you expect that to happen?
No, I was just about to ask, so what is there's the later box variant where they kind of made the Pac-Man character a little more cartoony? That's a later one, right?
I believe so. That's a 1987 reprint. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'm not surprised. This one seems to be pretty desirable.
Yeah, but especially, again, considering the condition, it looks like this is the best condition of the bunch. So, yeah, my God, what is that? What's close to $2,000 on that one, so that's pretty wild. And here's a 9.0. I feel like this is maybe like a mid-run print. Last second one. That's going to end up around 1,000. So again, very strong showing for Pac-Man here tonight.
Yeah. By the way, I feel like this is the point in the auction where I should confess that I have accidentally purchased at least one item.
All right, so here's where, while we do 2 more Pac-Man, I'll try and make a guess.
Okay.
It's not like a substitute question. Is it, yes, no question, is it an Activision title?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a racing-themed Activision title?
Yes.
Okay. Is it Grand Prix?
Yes.
Well, call me Kreskin, Jim, and maybe it's just because I know you for so many goddamn years. There you go. Well, you know what? I don't think you did a bad job on that. That didn't go too crazy.
I'm at peace with it.
Yeah, no, and it's a good title, and if you don't have one yet, I think you did well on that. I don't think there's any complaints. Activision again, Plaque Attack. This one's kind of obscure. They didn't print a lot of this one. It's a later game. And I'm surprised it's not getting as much love as it is.
I'm doing my part.
Honestly, anything under 500, I think is a good deal. I rarely see Plaque Attack loose or complete in box, so kind of surprised where this is landing because you're just not going to see this come up often. Hard to find game all around. Legitimately shocked at this. Once it gets to around 500, I'd say it's about where it belongs. And it's at 400.
Yep.
But a very, very tough one to find. Okay, now it's crossed the 500 mark. Oh, now it's crossed the 600 mark. Maybe somebody out there is watching the stream and getting advice from us. So if that's in fact the case, Heritage, feel free to send both of us a Red Lobster gift card after the show. You can find both of us on social media. We're very easy to find.
Ow.
Wow! Holy crap! Well, if you're not out, Jim, I'd say you're probably maybe you should stop listening to me. Yeah,
I'm out.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's a tough one to find. 1,300 after the premium. Pole Position, another solid port of an arcade game from Atari. Of course, the original arcade game, so iconic. If you went into an arcade, you and I, when you go in an arcade, some of the games with the attract mode music were just so iconic. Like the attract mode music from Pole Position and the Prepare to Qualify. Just as you're walking by, you just felt like you're in an arcade. When you hear
I'm not
it,
gonna lie, I bought one last week. I think it was like a 9.2.
Mhm.
I got it for like under $100. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
that.
and if that's the case, then you did very good because as you can see here, now granted it's a 9.88++, but
Sure.
Still, it's a great game. The arcade game and the Atari port, no, the 26 port, they're both Atari, but and the artwork is phenomenal as well.
I'm looking ahead at the Qbert. So the silver Qbert is the early run, huh?
Yeah, the silver Qbert. So here's what happened. Parker Brothers developed and distributed the game. And then in 87, Atari acquired the rights to all of the Parker Brothers titles and released them under the Atari, we'll call it the beige box motif. For my money, the original Parker Brothers Silver is the OG and arguably the more, in my opinion, the more desirable. Everyone to each their own.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I've got one of the red ones here.
Yep. And again, you see, the problem with the port of Atari Qbert was the control mechanism for the arcade game was weird in that while it's a four-directional game, it's not a northwest, east, south. It's a northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. And it was very difficult to make that make sense with a northwest, east, south joystick. Very difficult to control. I think it frustrated the hell out of players. At least it did for me. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but I mean...
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on.
But nonetheless, the artwork is iconic, and if you're going to collect the Parker Brothers subset, you got to get yourself a Qbert. So that kind of explains why we're nonetheless, playability aside, it's going to easily cross the 200 mark and perhaps higher, and that's a 7.0. So one could only imagine what a really, truly minty copy would fetch at the auction house. And, of course, we'll be doing the Atari distributed late print Qbert next. It's a 9.0.
Yeah, that's the one I have. Red box.
So let's see a few more things coming up here. What else is looking good? Oh, yeah, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Looks like it's going to be a couple of Sorcerer's Apprentice. Those, if I recall correctly, I'm trying to remember if those were mail order or not. They may or may not have been, but I know they didn't make a whole lot of them. Quest for Quintana Roo, another very obscure third-party game. For those who like to do that, so it's going to fetch a few hundred bones. And then after that, of course, Rampage. Another example of a game, it was let's see, 1989, probably, I think that might have been Rampage. Activision ported it, the last Activision Atari 2600 game.
Oh, is that right? Really?
In 1989. So yeah, I believe that might have been the very last Activision 2600 game. And as you can see, that itself commands some reverence, as it's over the $1,000 mark for a sealed Rampage. I'm happy with that because I recently came into a nice complete in box version, so that certainly brings all the values up on that. So that's kind of nice. Real Sports Base. Have you played the Real Sports games, Jim?
Yeah, kind of.
Baseball
I'm smart enough not to bid on them.
Yeah, baseball was wonky because the mechanics were all broken in that game. It was an exercise in frustration, Real Sports Baseball. But if you got to do the subset or you want all the silver label games, you gotta check it off the box. So there's that. And now coming up after that is Robot Tank, one of the Activision games I've always wanted to like, but I could never get into it.
Yeah, I've been on a few of these, but I tend to tap out. I don't think they're all that scarce, that's for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Let me see. Yeah, Robot Tank is very much, very much inspired by, the ripoff is a little strong, but very much inspired by Battlezone. And then, of course, Skiing, which you might make the suggestion was inspired by the Taito arcade classic Alpine Ski.
One of your favorites.
And it's one of yours as well. I mean, again, another example, Jim, when you walk into an arcade and you're just listening to a track music, the and then what do you call it when you fall over?
Well done. You're a regular Michael Winslow.
The Michael Winslow of Taito, yeah. If you play that sound in isolation, you know exactly what that sound is.
I'm trying to see what I have a Skiing here somewhere. I'm not sure what the grade is, but I think it's a 9.6.
Sure.
So let me ask you this, because here's something I've never seen at auction while this Skiing goes. Yeah. What do you think a Journey Escape would go for? I've got a
I don't know, but I have a weird feeling that's one of those things you got crossover appeal, because that is is that adjacent to the band Journey?
Yeah, sure. The actual the coin-op game, the version of Journey. Don't you remember?
No. I just want to know if that was a port of that or if it was.
Oh yeah.
So here they go. You got obscure title, third-party publisher, low print title, and there's still a billion Journey fans out there. So that's one that I don't think we've ever seen at auction. But if you were ever going to part with something, looking to make some coin, it's probably that.
Yeah, you never know. Arnel Pineda might be out there watching and want to get a bid in.
He wants to buy a copy so he can ROM hack himself into it. He learned 6502 assembler so he could take Steve Perry out.
Okay, so here, I have one of these Blue Box Space Invaders, but it looks like it's not going to do too well.
Yeah, it's another one. There's just so many of them out there. Yeah, by the way, Sorcerer's Apprentice went for $1,000 each. So here's another Space Invaders. Now this one is the true U.S. release, the original United States one.
This is not the poser copy that I just presented.
This is the original United States one, and even for the patina, it looks like it has like a Caldor or some sort of price sticker on it. A lot of people go gaga for that. I love stuff like that. So yeah,
it is indeed a Bradley's. Can confirm.
Okay. Yeah, my old eyes can't see it from this distance, but that's cool. And then, of course, the 87 beige box, red box Space Invaders, those always have appeal. So those
I have
are probably...
one of these. I have a 9.8 A++.
Sure.
And even you can see they're not all that collectible.
Yeah. Space War. This is going to get a couple $100 on it because it's a 9.2.
Yeah, I've got a lowly 8.5 on the Space War.
A nice game. A very, very, one of the early, I believe it was a launch title. No, actually it was not a launch title, but it was one of the second wave titles. Spider
Okay,
Fighter,
Spider Fighter.
another great Activision shooter. A lot of fun, super playable.
Yeah, I don't think they're that rare though. They're pretty common.
There's a lot of it out there, but again, quality game through and through. Now, after this one, Spider-Man, I'm expecting to get a lot of love. Parker Brothers game. Obviously, Spider-Man has, like, everyone that's into comics is in love with Spider-Man, so.
Yeah, but these have really come down to earth. I think Carl Jopes did some videos on these.
Yeah, this title, I think,
kind
started
of
off in the stratosphere. Yeah, there might have been a little shenanigans a while back on these. You're right, yeah. Oh.
Sorry. I was so excited to pull my Superman out.
Hey, you know what? If I had $1 for every time I said that in high school, I wouldn't have to work as an adult, so.
Sadly, mine is only a complete in-box 7.0, but I'll be interested to see what the Superman sells for.
There you go. Okay, so here's an interesting one. The company Zonox, they had this gimmick of, they called them double-edged cartridges. So there was a game, you could insert the cartridge on one or the other side, and it would be two different games. Kind of a cool gimmick. The idea is they were giving you twice the value for your money, and it was a good marketing tactic. They did sell a lot of these. They're very collectible. People love these. And as you can see here, 7.5 sealed. They call them the double enders. Yeah. They do well. They do well. The games were average. They weren't great, but the idea was cool and it shows well. So, yeah, it's about right. These are about $1,000 on that. And of course, your Superman's coming up, but before that, of course, Star Wars. Speaking of things to get all the comic book people and the collectors crazy, anything with Star Wars is nutso. And this is a genuine 1982, Star Wars piece of memorabilia. 9.68 plus. It's still got some action going. It's 600. I'm kind of surprised. I would expect it to get close to 1,000. I'd be a little surprised if it didn't make it to the $1,000 mark.
Is it not your observation that the market seems to have softened just a tad?
Just a tad, but not across the board. It is specific to certain things. So, all right, no, I was wrong. 720. Now, here's the thing, Jim. So there were some copies of Spider-Man that had a promotional wallet included. Not many had this. And to have it sealed intact so the actual wallet is untouched, that adds a ton of value, and it does not surprise me that this is going to end around the $1,500 mark. I tell you, I think maybe only once or twice in my life did I find one of these in the wild, complete in box. It's not easy to find, so the price that you're seeing here is completely justified. Now, Jim, we're about to see likely the second highest priced game of the night.
Headliner.
The co-headliner. The headliner's coming up a couple later, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We talked about this in the pre-show. Wow. I mean, if there's one that potentially might hit the 10K mark, it could be this one. We'll see. But we're not done with Superman yet. Superman is still going. $2,300. And again, like I said, I totally understand it. This is a very difficult game to find. Why is the R logo going off?
24 beans. Speaking of Towering Inferno, did I mention that earlier?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm getting ahead. Meanwhile,
so here we go. As I was saying before, $8,400, $9,000 now. Again, I'm looking at these prices after premium, of course. So I might, $9,600. I think, Jim, we might make it.
So what was the story of this? This was not commercially available?
Right. I believe it was mail order only and very, very low print. There we go. $9,600. Well, if it doesn't hit the 10K, it came super, super close. $9,600 after premium. Wow.
Yikes.
That might be our top one tonight. Towering Inferno. This is a cute game, a cute premise. The firefighting game. And, well, okay, it is finding an audience. U.S. Games, they made a number of different, probably made 6 or 7 different titles.
I feel like I played this back in the day and not being very impressed. I've played the next few coming up, actually. Trick Shot, the Magic one coming up next. Played a lot of pool with Trick Shot.
And so it looks like it's going to land somewhere in the 500 to 600 range. Yeah, Trick Shot. Yeah, pool is difficult to implement on the Atari 2600. I played it. It was okay. It was serviceable. Yeah, about that. Trick Shot. I love the artwork. That's kind of cool. And looks like it's gonna probably be about a $200 game. Now, of course, Video Pinball, really iconic. I think another one of those titles that maybe not have been the best game ever, but it was one of those fun games you could just get lost in for an hour or two screwing around with.
I liked it. I loved it. I played a lot of it.
Yeah, and it's when you got on, and it's a lot of luck involved, but when you got on a rush on that game, it was a lot of fun. So there we go. Video Pinball. Good artwork on that. Oh wow, I'm kind of surprised at this. I wasn't expecting to go up to about the 500 range, but there we are. Of course, like I said, I had thought that the game that's coming up 2 down would be the highest, and it still might well be. Of course, X-Man, not to be confused with X-Men, one of probably the lowest print adult title that came out. Unlike Mystique, these guys were really obscure, about as mom and pop shop as you get. But of course, we'll do Warp Lock first by Data Age. And that's going to come and go. And then we'll see what this will be the last game of the night that's quote unquote a big deal. We will see if X-Man crosses the $10,000 mark. It remains to be seen. We'll need 2 people to want it, basically.
Not to be confused with the Marvel title.
Yeah. So it's at $9,000 after premium. So a couple bids. Well, that looks like it might be where it lands. No, $10,200. So we did have a game tonight. So it'll be the one game tonight that crosses in the 5 figures, and this might officially now be, Jim, the most valuable Atari cartridge would be X-Man.
It's funny. I noticed when you quote the price, you're always quoting the price with buyer's premium.
Yeah, because
ultimately, and if I buy that, if I paid $8,000, I don't tell anyone I dropped $10,000 on it. I say I got it for $8,000. Forget the buyer's premium.
Yeah, no, I just look at it like realistically. Well, that's what it's worth. If you wanted to sell it,
no, you're not wrong. You're right.
I would value it at that. Yeah.
I got a couple
Yar's Revenge, classic title, amazing gameplay on that.
Yeah, I got an 8.0. Hey, by the way, I hate to be a party pooper, but I'm going to need to tap out probably after the 2 consoles.
Yep, we're down to, I believe there's only 98 items. We have 14 left, so that's probably going to be no more than 10 minutes left here tonight. And we're not going to do a long post-mortem. It's going to be a thanks for coming, goodbye. I have a bunch of stuff going on as well.
I know you've got your eye on that Castle Wolfenstein 3D, though, that's coming up.
Oh, yeah. And I will say, folks, as we get into that last 10 here, just want to let people know, thank you, first and foremost, for watching. If you're watching this on video on demand, as most people do us a favor. Leave a comment if you like this. If you would like to see us do this more frequently, what you need to do is leave a comment, like the video, leave a comment, give us the feedback, and if there's demand, then hey, you know what, Jim, what do you think? Maybe we do this again sometime.
If you build it, we will come.
Yeah. There you go. And of course, check out Jim, you got anything you want to plug, by the way?
Yeah, I'm retired. I used to do a podcast, The Lone Shark, JimSharkey.com. Make sure you spell that Sharky with an SHARKY.
$4,500 on that first box Atari. The other one apparently going for a lot less, but it's a Canadian one. I mean, what are you going to do? Appreciate you giving the plugs. Of course, with me, if you like playing Wordle, I think you know that I'm the Wordle guy on the internet. And just search Wordle, Doug Mansland. I'm going to plug my girlfriend Cassandra Hammerstone's channel, Salt and Zest. If you like to respirate, most people I think do. You need food, and if you want good food, go to that channel. And there's all sorts of delicious, yummy recipes on there. Both Jim and I are on Twitter, right? Are we on Twitter?
Is this where I take my leave, Doug?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Jim, thanks for joining us. I'm going to be following you right out there. And there you go. Thank you, Jim. All right. Jim Sharkey, ladies and gentlemen. So happy to see him. Oh, look at that. He's hold on, let me see if I can tidy that up just a touch. There we go. All right. And we're going to stay here for just a couple more minutes and finish this one off with Parker Brothers Popeye. It looks like it's going to be a $500 game. That's about right for the Parker Brothers. We have, let's see, about, maybe 10 more games left. We have an Atari 7800 Joust here. About $124. Probably get to about close to $150, maybe if there's another one, maybe not. So it looks like we've gotten through our Atari 2600. It's gonna be a 7800 game here. The Joust, a couple of one more 7800, then a little ColecoVision, a little Intellivision, a little this and that as we wrap things up. Here's one more Atari 7800 game, one-on-one basketball. Of course, I think this is what? Magic Johnson. No, this is Dr. J versus Larry Bird. I'm sorry. And boy, look at that. Definitely some collectible value for fans of the basketball legends. That's cool. That's cool. And to close it out, the last three items will be the Nintendo Game & Watch, the little LCD handheld games that were iconic at that time, will be the last three items tonight. There's Beam Rider for ColecoVision. Looks like that's a nice little... That one's a tricky one to get if you're into ColecoVision, by the way. Not the easiest title to find. Not the easiest one to find at all. Looks like it's going to land somewhere around 200 or so. So we got a couple in television going through here. Like I said, a copy of Wolfenstein. I believe that's the DOS version before our Nintendos. Once again, I really hope you had a good time with this. If you enjoyed taking a walk down memory lane, like I said, I can't say this enough. I really would love if you leave some comments. Let me know if this is your cup of tea. Do you enjoy us talking about Atari on Reclaiming Retro as well? Because I want to do more Atari-related content. And, again, I want to make sure that what I'm making is of interest to you guys. So let me know. It definitely helps us out. So here we are in Intellivision land. Yes, they did port Frogger to Intellivision. Intellivision being that console that just never really got a lot of love. A lot of things didn't quite go right in terms of design on there, particularly in terms of the controls. But again, you know what? It's not like they had a lot to work off of. These guys were all Atari, Mattel. They were all blazing new frontiers, so you can't fault design decisions when this was a brand new industry. And here's He-Man in the Intellivision. This is Intellivision. Yeah, Intellivision He-Man. And again, you know, same iconic artwork as the 2600, but again, it's kind of, maybe you call it the Intellivision curse. It's still going to land around $1,000. But, you know, people want the Atari stuff. And when it's Atari versus Intellivision. So there you go. And we'll have a copy of NBA basketball for the Intellivision is the last Intellivision game tonight. I presume it's, clearly it's a licensed game. I imagine there's some crossover appeal there on something like that as there would be here with He-Man, seeing as how it is over $1,100. And there's NBA basketball. I believe the Wolfenstein that's coming up is, I want to say that's a DOS version, but we'll see in a second when it comes up. It might not be. I'm not 100% sure. We will see in a moment as we watch the NBA basketball game. $200 plus on that one. Wow, I'm looking ahead. The last 4 items, these Nintendo Game & Watch, multi-$1,000 items. I'm kind of surprised. I didn't realize there was that much interest there. Oh, Atari Jaguar. That's interesting. I'm surprised that there's a Jaguar game. That's certainly, that's from, let's see, 1994. I'm not sure why that was selected for this particular auction. It's not even in the same era, but nonetheless, all right. Wolfenstein 3D for the Atari Jaguar. Definitely has some fans. It looks it's $720 after the premium. And looks like it's still got a few more bids. Could hit the 1,000 mark on that one. Interesting. And looks like it's going to close at $780. Oh, no. Last minute bid. So now we're at $840. And then again, we'll be closing out tonight with 4 of the iconic Nintendo LCD handhelds, the Game & Watch series. This one, Donkey Kong Hockey. If that sounds obscure, it's because it most certainly is. So here we go, $1,300 on that one. And Fire Attack. Yeah, Fire Attack. I'm not even familiar with a lot of these. These are definitely obscure. $4,000 on that. There must be a rarity issue on that one. $4,000. Parachute also is going to be in the $4,000 region. And then finally, game referred to as Turtle Bridge. Again, I couldn't tell you much about these, but it is interesting to see what we've got here. So there we go. And Turtle Bridge looks like it's going to be around the $2,600 mark. Yes, there you go. So there you have it, folks. There it is, the Heritage Auction. The Pioneers of Video Games, I believe they called it. Mostly Atari. It was a lot of fun, folks. We had about an hour and 10 minutes of fun. Again, once again, thank you to Jim Sharkey for joining me tonight on the show. It was good talking about Atari and memory lane and all that good stuff. Hope you had a great time. Again, please let me know in the comments what you think about this sort of thing. You want to see us do it again? You want to see me do it? You want to see us do it? You want to see more Atari content? What do you want to see in Reclaiming Retro? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Love to hear your feedback. Folks, thank you so much. We'll see you again real soon. Take care, everyone. Good night.